Hi everyone, for this part of the Cell Bio Lab lecture, we're going to be covering the plasma membrane permeability. The permeability of the membrane will determine its effectiveness as a barrier. This means that the greater its permeability, the easier it is for substances to cross the membrane. If nothing is able to cross the membrane, it is said to be impermeable. Now, if all substances cross without any difficulty, it is said to be freely permeable. With regards to the plasma membrane, it actually falls somewhere in between, and for this reason, it is said to be selective permeable. In other words, a selective permeable membrane will permit some substances to cross freely, but restrict others from crossing. And what will determine the differences in permeability? Well, here are a few factors. It may be due to the substance's size, electrical charge, molecular shape, solubility, or any combination of all these factors. The permeability of the plasma membrane will vary depending on the organization and the characteristic of the lipids and the proteins within the plasma membrane. A substance may pass through the membrane by a passive or an active process, and there are three passive processes. We have simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis. And there are three active processes: active transport, endocytosis, and exocytosis. Let's take a look at all of these processes in a little bit more details in the next few slides. Let's talk about simple diffusion first, which is the movement of molecules from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. And this difference between the high and low concentrations is known as a concentration gradient. Therefore, when referring to movement during diffusion, we say that the molecules will move down a concentration gradient until the gradient is eliminated. Notice how we have 5 molecules of this pink substance outside of the cell in this extracellular space, and 2 pink molecules inside of the cell in the intracellular fluid or in the cytoplasm. Therefore, there is a higher concentration gradient outside when compared to inside, correct? And this means that the molecules will want to move from the outside to the inside down the concentration gradient until this gradient is eliminated, until it reaches equilibrium. And we will have about the same number of molecules outside as we have inside of the cell. And this is our simple diffusion. And what will be some of the factors that will affect the rate of this movement? Well, we have membrane permeability, concentration gradient, size of the molecules, the charge and the lipid solubility of the diffusing molecules, and temperature. And which substances will be involved in this process? We can have gases, we can have small inorganic ions and molecules, and even some lipid-soluble materials. Now, for the passive process of facilitated diffusion, the solutes are passively transported across a plasma membrane by a carrier protein as seen on this middle image, which shows a carrier protein transporting these green substances from the area of higher concentration to the area of lower concentration. And there are also channel proteins as seen with the image on the right, with these red substances also moving through these channel proteins, being transported from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Therefore, we can conclude that as in simple diffusion, the direction of movement follows the concentration gradient, which is what this arrow here on the far right shows. Now, factors affecting this rate are going to be concentration gradient, the size, the charge, and the solubility of the solutes, temperature, availability of the carrier proteins or the channel proteins, and substances involved can be glucose or amino acids. Now let's jump into covering osmosis, which is the diffusion of water molecules rather than solutes across a selective permeable membrane. Note that the water molecules diffusing toward an area of lower water concentration are moving toward an area of higher solute concentration. And because solute concentrations can easily be determined, they are used to determine the direction and force of osmotic water movement. Water can move freely across the cell membrane of all cells, either through protein channels or by slipping between the lipid tails of the membrane itself. And what are some of the factors that are going to be affecting the rate of the water movement? We can have the concentration gradient and opposing pressure, and substances involved, in this case would be just water. So osmosis refers to just the movement of water. Now, the movement of water molecules is not itself regulated by some cells. So it's definitely important that these cells are exposed to an environment in which the concentration of solutes outside of the cells, in other words, in the extracellular fluid, is going to be equal to the concentration of solutes inside of the cell, in other words, in the cytoplasm. So two solutions that have the same concentration of solutes are said to be isotonic, meaning equal tension. When cells and their extracellular environments are isotonic, then the concentration of water molecules is the same outside and inside of the cells, and the cells maintain their normal shape and function, as we can see right over here from this image. And osmosis will occur when there is an imbalance of solutes outside of the cell versus inside of the cell. Therefore, a solution that has a higher concentration of solutes than another solution is said to be hypertonic, and water molecules tend to diffuse into a hypertonic solution. So cells in a hypertonic solution will shrivel as water leaves the cell via osmosis. So notice how these cells over here are all shrinking because they are releasing the water inside of them. And in contrast, a solution that has a lower concentration of solutes than another solution is said to be hypotonic, and water molecules tend to diffuse out of a hypotonic solution. Therefore, the cells in a hypotonic solution will take on too much water and they will swell. They will become swollen, with the risk actually of eventually bursting or exploding. In fact, a critical aspect of homeostasis in living things is to create an internal environment in which all of the body's cells are in an isotonic solution, and various organ systems, particularly the kidneys, work to maintain this homeostasis. For all of the transport methods described above, the cell expends no energy. So membrane proteins that aid in the passive transport of substances do so without the use of ATP. But during active transport, ATP is going to be required to move a substance across a membrane, and often with the help of protein carriers, and usually against its concentration gradient. And one of the most common types of active transport involves proteins that serve as pumps. And even just by thinking of the word pump, you might think of expending energy to maybe pump air on a bicycle tire, for example. So similarly, energy from ATP is going to be required for these membrane proteins to transport substances, molecules, or ions across the membrane. And usually this will be against their concentration gradient. So from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. And this is why it needs a pump. So the sodium-potassium pump shown on the image here on the right, which is also called the sodium-potassium ATPase, will transport sodium out of the cell while moving potassium into the cell. Because remember in the beginning that I told you that there's a higher concentration of potassium inside of the cell and there is a higher concentration of sodium outside of the cell. But the pump wants to pump even more potassium inside of the cell and sodium outside of the cell. Therefore, it's going against the concentration gradient. The sodium-potassium pump isn't going to be an important ion pump that's going to be found in the membranes of many types of cells. And these pumps, they're going to be particularly abundant in nerve cells, which are going to be constantly pumping out sodium ions and pulling in potassium ions to maintain what we call an electrical gradient across their cell membranes. And an electrical gradient is a difference in electrical charge across a space. In the case of a nerve cell, for example, the electrical gradient exists between the inside and the outside of the cell, with the inside being negatively charged at around minus 70 millivolts relative to the outside. And this negative electrical gradient is going to be maintained because each sodium-potassium pump moves 3 sodium ions out of the cell and 2 potassium ions into the cell for each ATP molecule that is used. And this process is going to be so important for nerve cells that it accounts for the majority of their ATP usage. And there might be other protein carriers, but notice how there's always going to be ATP involved because they're always going from a lower concentration to a higher concentration. So it's going against the concentration gradient. We do have other forms of active transport that do not involve membrane carriers, and these are endocytosis and exocytosis. So endocytosis, which means bringing into the cell, is going to be the process of a cell ingesting material by enveloping it in a portion of its cell membrane and then pinching off that portion of the membrane as we see on this image. So once pinched off, the portion of the membrane and its contents becomes an independent intracellular vesicule. And a vesicule is going to be a membranous sac, a spherical, a hollow organelle bounded by a lipid bilayer membrane. And in this way, endocytosis often brings materials into the cell that must be broken down or digested. In contrast, exocytosis, which means taking out of the cell, is going to be the process of a cell exporting material using a vesicular transport. So many cells are going to manufacture substances that must be secreted, like a factory manufacturing a product for export. And these substances are typically going to be packaged into a membrane-bound vesicule within the cell. And when the vesicule membrane fuses with the cell membrane, as we can see right over here, the vesicule will release its contents into the interstitial fluid. The vesicle membrane then becomes part of the cell membrane, as we notice right over here. So cells of the stomach and the pancreas actually produce and secrete digestive enzymes through exocytosis. In addition, endocrine cells produce and secrete hormones that are then sent throughout the body And certain immune cells also produce and secrete large amounts of histamine and chemical that are important for the immune response through exocytosis.